To make a better planet and to escape the barren intellectual wasteland, we bring you Change the World Productions, and we're going to be talking about life as photonic in a series of lectures based on the work that I was able to do many, many years ago, stories that Hollywood cannot tell. And basically, I wrote the book on the Promorpheus, on the factors of light, and got nominated for the Nobel Prize, invited to the Nobel Prize Hospital. And basically, light is what is guiding life. These plants are looking for photons, not for chemicals. And the chemical idea is gone. Infrared light is used to modulate metabolism through the cell membrane. And basically, then if we look into the DNA, we're going to find out that visible light can be used to modulate reproduction, a type of mitogenic radiation. And the little kinesin here, ultraviolet light, is used to modulate intercellular communication. We can only understand life through an idea of communication and light and photons. And now, let's learn more. Little story about my past, and the movie, the true movie of Water, Wine, Homeopathy, tells a story about the drug companies and their antagonism. You see, I am the man who left America to find freedom, who's no longer a man. And basically, I tried to develop a new science, taking in type of energetic science, and through the work that I had started back in the 70s and 80s, in 1996, I was nominated for the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Basically, because I had discovered an energetic photonic process that was the basis of life. Now, I developed this, and I did most of the science starting in America, but then I moved to Budapest, where I started to put together. And I was in a bar, and I said to the doctor, I know how the white blood cell can hunt and find his prey in the body. A couple of us guys were sitting there, and I was with a medical doctor, and basically we're able to talk about these different things. And I said, I know how the white blood cell can track and find the intruder, the bacteria, etc. He said, well, if you can do that, you're going to get the Nobel Prize. So I said, well, dust it off. You see, here we see the white blood cell hunting the bacteria. Of course, the chemical idea is that it's chemotaxic agents, little bits of protein coming off of the bacteria allow them to hunt. And I said, no, I believe that he's using photon receptors. He's also using smell, yes, don't get me wrong, he's using some smell, but he's also capable of sight, a type of vision in the infrared and visible light. The doctor said, no, it's hogwash. You see, doctors are all taught about chemistry. And I told the doctor, because he said he had to get up and go to pee, and I said, well, when you have to pee...
I have to go to the bathroom.
It's just like anybody else, you have to...
You're gonna go.
Gotta go, you gotta go, and when you go, basically, you have to use your photon receptors. You use your eyes, your photon receptors, to find out where you're going to deposit. Basically, the receptor site for your deposit of urine. You have to have your eyes to be able to do this. Just like with Michael Corleone, he had to use his eyes, his photon receptors, to go into the bathroom, and basically he wasn't looking to make a deposit for a receptor, he was looking for something else. And when this happens, we can see the basic nature of what we're talking about, photon receptors. Now, of course, the chemical companies are well invested into chemical and the chemical understanding, and they represent a vast quantity of income.
The healthcare industry today is worth $2 trillion a year. The top 10 pharma companies make more money than all 490 of the other Fortune 500 companies combined.
The incredible wealth that they've done, that they've convinced the doctors of a chemical understanding, a fixation into the chemical, and inability to understand the photon receptors. They want you to think that the white blood cell is blind. And now, just imagine a blind man who had to smell his way to the toilet, smell and feel his way to the toilet. And we would see that he probably would be not well functioning. He probably would create some problems and it would be very difficult for life to ensue if all of our cellular function were blind based on chemistry. And I was able to prove that truly there was a energy, that there was a photonic relationship that could be measured, detected, and described.
This is not a pill. This is tens of millions of dollars in research. This is thousands of hours of hard labor. This, ladies and gentlemen, is software. Your training will last.
So in the movie Water, Wine, Homeopathy, basically here's a scene where I was going in to find a receptor site for urine. And of course the drug companies attacked me and tried to destroy the work that I was doing. Their extreme funding and money and financial power has made the drug companies so powerful, and they really want a chemical understanding, not an energetic understanding. But if we look into even the function of different neurotransmitters, it cannot be explained in a random. You see, they're drawn towards. They don't just bounce around in random fashion. And of course, these things are way too small to look at chemotaxic smell receptors. And yet, all of our biology works through a process. Now, in this movie, we're going to be developing much more of the photonic explanations of life.
It's not yet recognized by the FDA. But you can boost sales by hinting at what these drug approved solely for the treatment of depression. Off-label uses: alcoholism, bulimia, PMS, smoking, social anxiety.
Photons are everywhere. They're an essential part of all chemical process. In all processes, photons are being absorbed, being radiated. And here we have the electron density model, where we take a look at the idea of the electrons in an atom, and they're really in some type of energy state. This orbital idea of the electron really isn't true. We know that's more of an electron density. We know there's more of a quantic factor. And we do know that when an electron gets a photon, it goes to a higher state. And when it releases that photon, it goes to a lower state. So that all activity is basically photonic. Just like with the color green, if we all have these different levels that the electron must be in, can't be in half a level. And when it absorbs a photon, it goes to a higher level. And if it releases, it goes back to a different level. Based on the change in that level will dictate what is happening and what is changing, what type of light is coming out. Biologists and chemists have made literally millions of diagrams like this of the chemical reaction. And now it's time to realize that all chemical processes are photonic. Photons are used by life to regulate all processes. We're going to have to rethink the whole idea of medicine. If we look at the big communication of the master equation, photons come into the plant, come out of the animal, and basically we start to see that photons can be used by life to regulate all cellular communication, all cellular processes. We start to understand that this is how we can now move into an advancement and recognize that all of these pathways, all of these chemical pathways need to be rethought. All chemical processes are photonic in their operation, photons coming in and out. And photons are used by life to regulate all life processes. We swim in this universe of photons, being absorbed, being released, being transmitted. This is how our telephones work. This is how our cells work. And all of biology and medicine needs to be rewritten to address the photon communication in and between the cells. Plants have a form of consciousness. They are alive. And what is the definition of living? Basically, we're going to discuss this in terms of quantic behavior now, because things that are alive are things that are able to metabolize and reproduce. So we're going to discuss this idea. This is the concept that I introduced way back in 1982. You see, plants can metabolize, metabolism, and then reproduce. And they spend a lot more energy on metabolism than they do for reproduction. We see these plants reaching for photons, light, heat. We see this. And see, basically these type of energies that the plant makes, that the living tissues make, that the cells make, etc. Infrared radiation is used to control and modulate the metabolism. And visible light, which is a mitogenic type of radiation, this is used to modulate the mitogenesis and reproduction. These two different things basically work together. Now, as we go through and analyze this, we're going to see that this is all about the photon and the electron. Every chemical process has a photon related to it, and when that photon were to hit an electron, it changes the orbital or energy state. We don't really say orbital anymore. It changes the energy state of that electron to a higher state. When that electron goes back to a lower state, another photon is released, and basically the nature of this photon is based on the wavelength between these two different connections. So we have this energy. Now we can see that plants are indeed looking for light, looking for heat, infrared and visible light, part of the electromagnetic spectrum. And this is all happening because every chemical process everywhere is a process related to the photon, absorption or emission. This emission and this absorption of the photons get together and make then the viable nature for what is life. Now the Gurwitzes did an experiment. This is way back when, way back in the 1930s. He took two different types of onion cells, from the root and from the side. And if we look at the normal type of onion cell from the side, we're going to see very, very few of these cells are in mitosis. If we look into the root cells, we're going to see mitosis inside the cells. This is what happens in the tip of the onion that's growing. Now when you put the two together and put a little bit of the tip aimed at the cells, and he did this experiment and put glass in the middle so there was no chemical contact, and lo and behold, what would happen was the cells of the onion side of the onion would start to go into mitosis. And he found out that this was a type of mitogenic radiation, a type of radiation, and then with photomultipliers and filters, as time went by, they were able to show that this was invisible light. Very, very weak, but it was a communication factor. And now what we know is that life has cellular communication with photons. It happens to be more with infrared for metabolism, and it happens to be more with visible light for reproduction. Now, when we get into the different ideas of these cells, now scientists have found that there is this communication in the infrared. Here we have a spinach plant. They put carbon nanotubes into it, and now this plant can be used to detect whether there is a bomb or not. Yes, they can detect different types of chemicals using an infrared camera, of course, because this happens through the plant metabolism is in the infrared. And now they can measure the detection of the plant through the infrared. Now this happens, and basically we know that plants are looking for heat, looking for light. They search. This is not a chemical reaction. They're not looking for antigens. It's photonic. And if you take care of your plant seeing with infrared, and also your plant liking infrared, this is how the plant sees you. The plant has a different idea. He's moving slower. So the plant sees you as an infrared thing. Basically, it's really amazing. But the plants can actually see. They have a low visibility. But there is an effect, a communication effect. And if we get to the kinesian, here we have this little guy, 100,000 of them in every cell, which are doing the activity, walking along the microtubule, carrying different proteins. And when one of them is in trouble, something gets blocked, and he's walking on the microtubule, and he's trying to bring a protein from the nucleus to the membrane. When this happens, this little guy will want to call for help. Now, if we take a look at the size of this guy, and we're talking about 60 nanometers, etc., 70 to 80 nanometers, this little kinesian, we know that he can't be sending out chemicals because antigens and chemicals, they're almost in 1/4 his size or more. So what happens is when these guys need help, they send out photons, electromagnetic radiation, just like your telephone. They send out to get help to then construct another kinesian that will then help them walk the microtubule and bring these different ideas and bring the different structures to the cell membrane for construction. Now, the white blood cell also uses these photons, and he has many nuclei so that he can triangulate, like we have 2 eyes. He has multiple nucleuses, and the nucleus help to assist in his vision of the infrared and the visible. So this is how the white blood cell is able to find his intruder, by looking for the photons. There is chemical antigen activity, yes, undeniably, but there's also a photonic vision. The white blood cell has eyes, and when he needs help, what he does was, as he takes a bacteria or microorganism and then basically starts to chew on it, inside this little vacuole, what will happen inside the bloodstream is he might need help. So he has a respiratory burst, a burst of light, visible light, that then comes off so he can call for help, because metabolism, etc., and this visible light is used to help call for help. And infrared radiation for metabolism and visible light for reproduction, or for, in the case of the white blood cell, the visible light is a beacon for help. Now, I wrote all about this back in 1982 in the Promorpheus, discussed all this, got it into the Library of Congress, and made the first presentation way back in the 80s. In 2008, I talked with a bunch of different scientists, and they could not understand the infrared communication factors. They could only understand mitogenic radiation as visible light, and couldn't understand it that the metabolic modulation would come from infrared radiation, because body heat is such a wasted thing that they figure it's just a useless byproduct. But there's really no useless byproducts in biology. Everything has a purpose, including that infrared, that body heat, etc. Plants need it, bodies give it off, and now what we have is we have a new type of quantic understanding, so that we start to look at biology in terms of quantic phenomena.
We have in every cell, we have about 100,000 chemical reactions per second. And if I tell you there are photons which are responsible for that, because a chemical reaction can only happen if the molecule which is reacting is excited by a photon. So not the intensity of the photons are important, but they have a very high degree of coherence.
Photons are everywhere. They're an essential part of all chemical process and all processes. Photons are being absorbed, being radiated. And here we have the electron density model, where we take a look at the idea of the electrons in an atom, and they're really in some type of energy state. This orbital idea of the electron really isn't true. We know that's more of an electron density. We know there's more of a quantic factor. And we do know that when an electron gets a photon, it goes to a higher state, and when it releases that photon, it goes to a lower state. So that all activity is basically photonic. Just like with the color green, if we all have these different levels that the electron must be in, can't be in half a level. And when it absorbs a photon, it goes to a higher level. And if it releases, it goes back to a different level. Based on the change in that level will dictate what is happening and what is changing, what type of light is coming out. We need to understand that there's a thermal light, which is a random entropic kind of disorganized pattern, just basically heat. Then there's a coherent light. Coherent light is capable of doing work, being focused and actually accomplishing something, conveying an information state. Coherent light can come from incoherent light with the proper wavelengths and filters. And coherent light can affect tissues better and actually communicate. And photons produced by stimulated emission can be produced into coherent light. As we start to understand this, we can start to see more of the effects of how coherent light in biology is happening. And in the human body, there's 100 trillion cells, maybe more. And each cell has 100,000 chemical reactions, and every chemical reaction is photon dependent. Photons being absorbed, being released. We are swimming in an ocean of photons that are virtually everywhere. And this coherent type of photon produced by biology is capable of stimulating the mitosis, helping to guide the mitosis. And basically, a human being then gets a type of coherent field around them. It's an electromagnetic and photonic field. The actual heat coming off of the body can be producing this field. And then we can work with somebody else who might be depressed, our field working to their field, and we can help people to grow. This is the idea of networking. Human beings are networking animals. Human beings develop their field, and certain people develop a more positive field based with energy. This positive field will grow. This positive field will touch and produce health. Stress reduction helps to deal with this and to help us to grow our field stronger and stronger, ever greater, as we start to learn meditation, mind control, how to relax through the moment, how to control the mind, and build our coherent energy field. This coherent energy field then can help work with others. The human being is truly a social animal who needs other people, and thereby our fields can harmonize. As we go into work, people work together just like the cells work together. People share and care, and their energy fields are connected, just like the cells, just like the atoms, the electrons. These things are connected through a type of field that can be understood through photonics, energetics, even subspace. A connection of heart and mind, networking, sharing, caring. And this then can help produce the planet field. Truly, a planet consciousness. Yes, there are over 100 trillion cells in the normal human body, and the body is producing more, and some are dying, some are being regenerated. And how does the cell know what to do? How does it know what to become? The DNA is the same in every cell. The DNA is exactly the same. The chemical is the same. How does the information get there? Well, how does this skier get into this little cell? How did that guy get into that cell? Now, the biologist, the chemist, he'll look for the chemical inside, because that's all they're doing is looking for chemistry. But we need to recognize that there's something more. There's something more than just chemistry. If I ask my son about the TV, he'll tell you.
Oh, Daddy, every transmitter sends out radiation, right?
Sends out photonic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation is sent from the transmitter to the receiver.
So, my telephone does the same, right?
Yes, that's how your telephone works. And that's how the TV works, and that's how we communicate through the planet.
And that's how the whole planet communicates with everything.
Yes, we have photonic communication. So this little guy in the TV comes from?
From radiation.
Electromagnetic radiation. The chemist and the biologist, well, they say, oh, I'm looking for the chemistry, and I tear apart the TV, and I don't find that skier. I look everywhere inside that TV. I don't find no chemicals. He's got to be chemical. Everything in the world is chemical. Everything chemical. How can I sell a drug if I don't believe in chemistry? I look for those chemicals, and I weigh the TV on, I weigh it off, and it's the same. There ain't no chemicals in there.
These chemical people, Daddy, are quite stupid, right?
Yeah, you're right, son. Those chemical people are kind of stupid.
Yeah, they are. They want to destroy the planet. But why?
Well, they want to try to sell things, and everything they do is about chemical pathways. But they don't understand that every chemical process is photonic and is controlled and influenced by photons.
But then they could easily do it in a natural way, right?
Well, you see, they still have this old-fashioned idea like the Pony Express.
The daredevil riders of the Pony Express begin their race to cut the dangerous journey across the continent from 180 days down to an incredible 10.
Here we have a little graphic display of all of the airplanes flying over America at one time. But you understand, these airplanes are communicating through radio.
Eddie, everybody knows about this radio communication and everything happens through radiation. Everybody knows that.
Well, the airplanes are carrying chemistry. They're carrying passengers, they're carrying cargo, they're carrying chemistry, but they communicate via radio, electromagnetic radiation. What happens if they didn't have radio?
Then they would be in trouble, right?
They'd be like Mr. Bean here. He'd have to drive the helicopter along the road.
Yeah, it would be impossible to move forward, Daddy. Everybody knows this.
Well, everybody kind of understands it, but the chemical people don't. You see, what we have to understand is that the cells actually have a type of radiation. It's very, very small. It's hard to detect. But they're sending out information and receiving information just like the airplanes are.
Daddy, why don't anybody teach those people how to learn this and how to use this?
Well, they're all stuck in the chemistry. That's all they see is the chemical pathway, and they can't get any further. There's no research being done. They're still living like the old postman.
Then, Daddy, we should try to teach them how to protect the nature and live a better life.
And these are chemicals, you see. They have this idea, like the old postman, about chemicals being transmitted. But today you get
radiation and emails, communication.
You get email?
Yeah,
everybody gets email.
Yeah, Daddy, I get it every day on my telephone.
You don't have to get mail anymore. Here we have all the boats in Europe, and they're all communicating with radio. But the real reason why they want to invest in chemistry is...
This is not a pill. This is tens of millions of dollars in research. This is thousands of hours of hard labor. This, ladies and gentlemen, is software. Your training will last 6 weeks.
Daddy, all this is about money. They don't care about people, the planet, and the future.
It's just profit over people.
Off-label uses are benefits not yet recognized by the FDA. But you can boost sales by hinting at what these drugs approved solely for the treatment of depression. Off-label uses: alcoholism, bulimia, PMS, smoking, social anxiety.
Well, these cells are actually chosen by a pathway that is photonic, because the DNA is the same in every cell, you see. So just like the chemistry of the TV set, well, the picture that comes into that TV set will be guided by the body, by the cells, whether it's going to be heart, whether it's going to be brain cells. And all of these factors happen through an electromagnetic process where things are drawn in, drawn out, by photons that modulate and guide them, just like we do with our radios.
Yeah, Daddy, that's so easy.
Well, it's easy to understand for us because we're open-minded, but the chemical companies have made doctors think different.
The healthcare industry today is worth $2 trillion a year. The top 10 pharma companies make more money than all 490 of the other Fortune 500 companies combined.
Every time an electron moves, it has a photonic reaction. Photon is absorbed, photon is released. And basically everything that is photonic, and certain of these photons can be coherent. The wavelength of these photons is influenced by the type of orbitals, how many orbitals things are jumping, whether the light's green or etc. But a coherent radiation can result from this, and coherent radiation can be used to help guide biology. So if we look at all these different chemical reactions, we're going to have to recognize that chemical processes are all photonic, and the photons are used by life to regulate life processes. We need to understand these things. So we need to see that there's energy in the system as cells act and interact. Our immune system and basically all the different parts, there's an electronic communication of electrons and photons being received. The electromagnetic radiation. Now in a series of our scientific studies and a bunch of the movies that we've made, we've been able to show that life is a balance of metabolism and reproduction. And this is basically balanced. And what we're going to find is that infrared radiation is modulating metabolism, where visible light is modulating the mitogenesis, mitogenic radiation. Just like we talk about antenna effects of how an antenna can receive electromagnetic radiation, the telephone, etc. Also, we'll find out that the cells can receive infrared for metabolism, and visible light can be also used to help to understand the ideas of mitogenic radiation and DNA. This is happening through the cell nucleus. If we put this together, we can see, as we've shown, that all of the sizes of cells are all falling into the communicative principles of photonic communication. We've proven this, but yet this interferes with the patent processes of the synthetic chemical companies making unnatural things. In order to get a patent, you have to prove that it's unnatural. Whereas in truth, all of nature is way, way beyond that type of patent process. Everything is photonic. And medicine hasn't even gotten a grip on it yet.
Daddy, this is so interesting. I think that we could teach other people how to take care of nature. Even I know that this lady came there through photons, right?
Yep, it's electromagnetic radiation, photonic communication, that puts her into that TV cell. If we start to understand more about this photon, we then recognize that all the chemical pathways, they're all valid, but they need to be studied for their photonic absorption and release and emission, because all chemical processes are photonic.
This is so interesting, Daddy.
And photons are used by life to regulate all life processes. This is something that we all need to recognize and develop.
Children need to be taught this at school.
Everything is photons. All of biology and medicine needs to be rewritten to address the photon communication between the cells.
Goodbye.
As humans, we move towards the light. We know that the light is the power. We've proven to you that basically all of life is photonic, and that life seeks an organization principle that is carried to us through information of electromagnetic radiation and electromagnetic. Now, it's our friend Schrodinger who talked about the idea of how life must fight against entropy, must fight against a disorganization. And yes, Schrodinger is the guy who talked about his cat. Is the cat alive? Is it dead? And then he had this idea about life, and he wrote this incredible book that showed that life was truly quantic, and that there really was a type of negentropic principle in life that would try to resist the decay of entropy. If you are dead, then you start to lose your battle to room temperature, and you basically lose your battle to entropy. Whereas life is a factor of negative entropy. It had an organization principle, something that helped it to survive. This is what our friend St. George called syntropy. However, we now call it negentropy, or you can call it syntropy, whatever you wish. But basically what entropy is a type of randomness, where things decay, order goes to disorder, organized, disorganized, information, ignorance, all these different things. You see, entropy goes into a type of chaos or randomness, where negentropy, when the order goes to disorder, it's restored back to order. This fight that we have against the chaos principle, it brings it back with a negentropy, a living principle. And that if you should die, then you go back to a entropy, and that things go into disorder. Your body goes to room temperature. Then the living principle is gone. Because inside the body, inside the very cells, there's an organization principle. An organization that allows things to have control. Things outside of the cell can be in random disorder. They're bouncing around, bumping into each other. But inside the cell, these items have harmony. They have a job. They do their job. They move in a controlled fashion. And this controlled fashion, we've shown, has a lot to do with the electromagnetics. has a lot to do with photonics, as that even the construction of the DNA molecules and the microtubules, all of these things have a certain set of rules that can be understood in a quantum physics, not in a thermodynamic way. And that the different cells, as they reproduce, they're doing it in an organized fashion. And what is the sense of this organization? What is the sense of this innate intelligence? This innate intelligence that allows these things to happen. Where is it coming from? Well, we've been able to show you in many of our videos that this is modulated by electromagnetic radiation. Mitosis has a visible light, a mitogenic type of energy, mitogenic radiation as we call it, that helps to guide it. So in this process, we're going to be able to find. And this light happens through a coherence principle. As these little things start to shake, they develop a coherence. This helps this process of the light to develop more coherent rays to accomplish data, to be able to send the proper information. Each cell of the body has exactly the same DNA, but it is receiving its information from other areas, its electromagnetic radiation information, and this helps to guide what cell is going to be made. How will that cell function? The electromagnetic connection and the electromagnetic radiation helps to tell the DNA what to do, how to do it, modulating, so that the cell is going to build in the correct fashion after it's been released from a stem cell. The nuclear membrane will act as a receiver for the infrared information, and the chromosomes will act as a receiver for the visible light information. This is a weak effect, but it's there as an effect, and it helps to modulate, because all of life is resistance to the disease of entropy, resistance to the disease of randomness. All of life needs to have a negative entropy, syntropy, a fight
Meanwhile,
against
the cell maintains its
disorganization,
shape through a
and a fight
cytoskeleton.
towards organization.
The cytoskeleton includes the thread-like
helps to receive this
microfilaments, which are
information,
made of
the
protein,
microfilaments, the microtubules,
and
all of these things
microtubules,
are in
which
the
are
process
thin,
of
hollow
receiving
tubes.
information through an electromagnetic radiation principle. Life will grow, cells will grow, as they all are being told and modulated through electromagnetic radiation as a connection that helps to generate and control the chemistry. And Schrödinger told us that life has a nutrient, negative entropy. It's not made by the synthetic chemical companies. And this negative entropy nutrient factor helps us to fight against decay and death and disease. We have shown that light, photons, electromagnetic radiation coming from the human body is a definite part of biology. It conveys information, and it's been used for the ages of humanity to show the positive, the health, the focus of the human mind.
I am the light of the world.
We have seen the light be used in so many different ways to describe the spirituality, the beauty, the wonder. And there is truly light coming from the human being and the human mind. And this type of light, we say enlightened, become enlightened. Enthusiasm means the light within. And with inside, as we grow into enlightenment and become enthusiastic, we see that this type of light, this halo effect, the lights coming from the human body, have been used spiritually throughout the ages. They've been used sexually to convey sexuality. The light has been shown as that beauty, that wonder, that even at the final moment, we capture that light. We say, go to the light. Move to the light.
To be the incredible decaying man.
Man is driven to move towards the light. Bring the light within. And we've seen the halo in iconic pictures and stories of the halo and lights coming out of the mind and out of the head of people throughout our history. And we use this in our paintings to show that glory of a oneness and a touch. So we see this halo, but yet we see that the devil here on the right, we don't see the light. We don't see that. That is the darkness, the dark side. And the dark side is not the healthy side. We see the halo for the angel, the positive. But the dark, you see, that is the devil. So as we are learning more about the lights coming out of the body, we start to see and we start to appreciate the wonders of the body, the wonders of light, and understanding the communication and coming to an awareness of who and what we are. And who and what we are beings of light, born in the stars, all of our atoms, all of our minerals, all of the elements, born in the stars, and becoming us, beings of light, using photons to communicate. Yes, the incredible finances and the power of money. And I'm afraid that back to that conversation with the doctor, he didn't really think I should get the Nobel Prize, even though I was nominated because another group of doctors believed that I should. And I know that a lot of doctors walk away from this. But I believe that as you watch more and more of this movie, you're going to come to understand that there really is a photonic explanation for the cellular functions and communications in life. I grew up as a whiz kid and was able to help people on the Apollo project and worked with lots of different scientists, Nobel Prize winners, etc. and came up with the Prometheus, a quantum biology idea based on photons. Got nominated for the Nobel Prize, was able to teach medicine, and lectured at the Nobel Prize Hospital. And then I became the man who left America to find freedom, who's no longer a man. I became Desiree and was able to see the power of the small, the power of freedom of mind and of thought. And then basically be able to teach this to other people all around the world. And here we have proof. These plants are not looking for chemicals. They're looking for photons. They're looking for light, looking for heat. And indeed, infrared light is used to modulate metabolism. It's the perfect size for the cell membrane. And visible light is perfect for the DNA to be able to stimulate mitosis and modulate reproduction. And then when we get inside the cell, we have these little kinesions. How could they communicate unless it was through some type of ultraviolet light to modulate their intercellular communication? And now we know that the healing of the nations will come from the leaves of the field, which will offer solutions to all of our diseases. Yes, I've been persecuted, prosecuted, degraded by the forces of the synthetic drug companies who value profit over people. Now it's time for us to grow and look at the photon nature of the world and to recognize that through the barren intellectual wasteland, we need now to change the world and realize that life is photonic and life is using photons to communicate just like we do with televisions and telephones. This is a story that Hollywood cannot tell. And basically, the mind can do anything. It just takes time. And after some 30, 40 years, I think it's time maybe to give me the Nobel Prize, or at least why I consider it.